Warning: this podcast discusses paranormal activity and other topics some might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Ashley.
And I'm her husband, Daniel.
And welcome to Ghost Gossip.
What's up?
We've been MIA.
Missing in action, for those who aren't acronym savvy.
Yes, we've been missing in action, but we haven't been missing. We've been home.
Yes, we have been home.
We've been working. Should we tell them our big news or should we wait?
I don't know. Maybe you caught my face looking at you like, should we tell them?
Oh, really? Is that what you were thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
I think we should.
You think we should?
Yeah, you know I'm a blabbermouth.
You are a blabbermouth. So we have some big news. We are moving.
Not far, though.
No, not far. We're not moving out of state or anything. We are just moving into the neighborhood we originally wanted to live in.
Yes.
And so that means we are leaving our little haunted house behind.
Yeah, maybe they'll follow us.
You know,
They're your friends.
They're my friends. They are okay to stay here. I mean, our family members will always follow us, but I think good old Wayne will stay here and continue his reign of terror.
Yep.
He's been really good, actually. He's been very quiet. He hadn't even been around, really.
No, he's like, you'll
have a lot going on. I'm going to dip right out of here and go somewhere else.
That's exactly what he's been doing. He's like, see ya.
Yeah, this is too much for even me, and I'm not even alive anymore. So
I'm going to go lift weights.
I'm going to go lift weights in the heavens.
Yes.
So we are selling our sweet little haunted house, and we will be moving, and the stories of my haunted house will just become a past memory and just stories that I tell from here on out. I won't be getting any more news stories from this location. So it's bittersweet. We're recording in the morning because we have been packing our house. So that's why I am so far behind. Also, I've been dealing with imposter syndrome. I deal with that, not feeling like I'm good enough, not feeling like I have any stories to share, and I suck at research. So it's a little overwhelming.
I suck at impasta. There's too much pasta going in.
The birds thought that was funny.
Crickets.
But yeah, so I've been trying to write this episode for about a month. We also lost our kitty, and that really threw me off because I was getting ready to really dive into research when she passed away. But I had a really cool experience with her since she's passed away. She came and visited me. I was in that half awake, half asleep dream state, and she came to visit me about a week after she died, and that made me feel really good. I miss her very much. She was very sick, and so it was time, but doesn't make it any easier.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yep, that's our big news, and hopefully, I'm not going to say I'm going to be back in 2 weeks, because in 2 weeks we physically, hopefully, as long as everything goes through, we physically move in 2 weeks.
And then the week after that, the kids start school.
Oh my gosh, yes. So hopefully I'll be back. I am trying to do more researched episodes, so it's a little bit more involved than just getting ghost stories. So I'm trying to work on my research, and I also go back to work.
Yes.
But
I'll start driving, so that's a plus.
Thank God. Thank God. I think eventually I will open up and talk about what we've been going through this past year. Yeah. Because what we've been going through is
a lot.
It's been a lot.
To say the least.
Yes. It is more than most people deal with in a lifetime, and it has been horrible.
We've had the condensed. It's basically been like a Maymester of life.
That's a good way to put it. Maymester of life. It's been horrible, and a lot of good learning lessons out of it.
Yeah.
It's brought us closer. It's brought us and the kids closer, but it has.
It's been tough.
It's been very tough, and it has trying to manage life and being a parent on top of everything else. It has been completely difficult. So once you start driving again, and no, he did not get in trouble for anything.
Yes, I did not get a DUI, which is the kind of go-to thought.
Yes, he did not. It has to do with medical issues. So once he's driving again, which is in a week from Monday, it will be a game changer, because for the past 6 months, I have done all the driving. Literally all the driving.
While 3 kids were all playing sports in 3 different locations at the same time.
While trying to get myself to work and him to work and medical appointments, and the medical appointments for me and my daughter, and then for his, he would Uber. So Uber and Daniel are very close now.
So if I never ride in an Uber again, I will be fine.
Well, when we go to Vegas, we'll probably...
We're walking.
Guys, Daniel will meet us there.
Yes.
He's not getting an Uber. Thank God for Uber, though, because without Uber, these past 6 months would have been even worse, because you can only be in one place at one time. So and big shout out to my family, Daniel's family, and my best friends and my sister, who really stepped up. And I mean, it takes a village, and without the support of our families, we would not have survived.
Yeah, and we have a wonderful village.
We have a wonderful, strong village. And yeah, we've been really blessed to survive these past 6 months, with that support system. Thank God for them.
Yeah.
But I'm not ready to go back to work, but I think it'll be good.
Me either.
These kids are crazy.
Me either.
You go back Monday.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, what we're talking about today is the Ashmore Estates.
I'm not familiar. I haven't done any of the research, so this is all going to be new to me. So there's no telling what I might say.
Yes. And see, I haven't talked to him about this because I've just been struggling to write this, because I can't write during the day because the kids are awake and the girls demand my attention no matter where I am. And so I've been trying to write this at night, and I finally finished.
Which I think it's kind of cool from my perspective. Like, I'm the on-site audience today.
Yes, he is. And unlike our last episode, he knew about the Bull Strait.
Right.
The Bull Strait.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one that is in Illinois, and he doesn't know anything about it. And I didn't know anything about it until I watched my paranormal show that I love.
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Illinois.
Illinois. Well, I think that's up for debate. The Ashmore Estates was formerly known as the Coles County Poorhouse. Have you ever heard of poorhouses or poor farms?
When people were in debt, they would go to the poorhouse, and like the poor farms, they would do work on the farms. And that was basically their punishment for being in debt and how they would pay off their debt.
It wasn't even debt. It was a residence used in the 19th century and the early 20th centuries to provide housing to the needy, dependent, and indigent populations.
Okay.
This included those who were elderly, mentally ill, and people who were unable to support themselves and their families.
Okay.
So it wasn't so much debt.
It wasn't like debtor's prison.
No. It was just a residence that people that could not afford to provide for themselves, that's where they went.
It was like the early projects.
Well, yeah. Again, we don't know anything he's going to say. I apologize in advance. The early projects.
I mean, that's what it sounds like.
But yeah, so it was buildings. The buildings were divided by gender, not race. So men were separated from the women. Mm-hmm. If they were African American and white, or, that's usually what the population was back in those centuries. They were only separated by gender, not color. So,
okay, that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. People who lived in the poor farms were known as inmates. So I think maybe that's why you were thinking they paid off their debt.
Yeah.
But they were known as inmates. And I'm not sure if this is completely true. I thought I saw somewhere they had their own number, like an inmate number, but I could be making that up. The only times that the inmates would commingle in the building, because they were completely separated for safety reasons, during Sundays, like church, or if they had events or something like that, they would commingle. But other than that,
did they live in like cells?
They had rooms and floors.
With bars?
No.
Okay.
No, wasn't a prison. Just they called it a residence.
Okay. But they
didn't commingle.
So they all had to stay in their rooms.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I'm just trying to put it all together in my head.
Yes.
On the fly.
Just imagine, I guess, if they worked with the men, the women worked with the women.
Okay. They didn't have time to like play cards and stuff.
I don't know if they had cards. The living conditions typically in poorhouses and poor farms were very poor. And
makes sense.
Yeah. So we'll get into that a little bit later on. The birds are singing.
Yes.
If you hear birds, it is my sister's birds that I have been pet sitting for 3 weeks, and Daniel is ready to Uber them to my sister's house.
Over it. I'd ask her this morning, when is she coming back?
I think she'll be back today.
They are morning birds, let me tell you. They're chirpity chirp chirp.
At least they don't sing throughout the night. They sleep at night.
Yeah. About 6 o'clock in the morning, they're ready to go.
Yes, they are. The facilities were government-run residences and overseen by superintendents who were elected officials. And just a fun fact about the facilities. So the federal government, until later on in, I guess, the 1900s, the federal government believed that it was not the federal government's purpose to participate in social welfare and believed that the responsibility of social welfare fell upon the individual states. Actually, the bill for the benefit of the indigent insane, also called the Land Grant Bill for Indigent Insane Persons, was introduced into Congress in 1854, but it was vetoed. And so the federal government participating in social welfare did not happen until much later.
Okay.
So on these farms, able-bodied people were expected to work. They either worked growing their own food, they worked raising their own livestock, growing their own grain, or providing housekeeping and care for the other residents. So if you were able-bodied, you worked during the day.
So if they're giving you a place to live, they're helping support you, you have to work for it.
Don't start.
What a novel idea. I'm sorry.
Daniel, don't start. These people had nothing. They had nothing, and the living conditions were very poor. Okay. Yes, you're not wrong, but like the accommodations were minimal. We'll get there. Stop it. I'm going to fuss at him this whole episode. I didn't realize he was going to be on his high horse about it today.
Soapbox, not really high horse. Soapbox.
Whatever.
Someone's sassy this morning.
You are sassy this morning.
I'm just trying to meet you where you are.
That's fine. I can dish out sass all day long.
Oh, don't I know? The
rules were very strict and accommodations were minimal. The Coles County Poorhouse operated from 1857 until 1869 in Charlestown Township near I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Loxa, Illinois. In 1870, 260 acres were purchased in Section 35 of the Ashmore Township for a new farm, and the first building built on the property was a 2-story timber and brick building that was constructed by H.B. Truman. Now I'm reading this. I got this from the Ashmore Estates website, and I'm going to link all of my sources in the show notes. From 1870 to 1879, the poorhouse housed roughly 250 inmates. In 1879, the superintendent, Joshua Rickett, recorded 32 deaths at the farm. Those inmates who died at the farm were buried in the pauper cemetery on the property. So it is believed that cemetery is still there, but they're unmarked, I don't think.
Yeah, I would imagine they didn't mark them.
And then later on, they built another little pauperous cemetery off of, I think it's Highway 16, I believe is what I saw, Route 16. And so those are marked, and that is believed to be the final resting place for 60 to 100 individuals.
Oh, wow. So
yes.
We're talking about, anywhere from 100 to 130 or 40 people.
Actually, it is recorded, and I'll get there with the caretaker from today's day.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching some YouTube shows about it, and she says that it is believed that there are 200 recorded deaths and people on the property total.
Oh, wow.
Yes, because most people that went into the poor farms, that's where they died. They didn't leave.
Yeah.
I guess some of them could leave, but that is what I read, that most people that went in there, they died there.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
It is sad.
By 1911, the Auxiliary Committee of the State Board of Charities condemned the Al's house for vermin-infested walls, rough floors, small windows, and improper ventilation. It was reported that flies swarmed everywhere and were especially noticeable on the food prepared for dinner.
Wow.
It was said that the animals in the barn lived in better conditions than the people in the building did.
Wow. That's terrible.
Yes. So your little remark earlier, like you got to work, everybody deserves to have, even if they're working for their accommodations, they don't need to have vermin infested walls
or flies on their food.
Yeah,
yes. that's inhumane.
It is inhumane, and that's according to the current caretaker of the property. The people were reported to die from pneumonia, suicide, tuberculosis, and old age. There were some others though, and we'll get into those in a second. In 1915, the Almshouse Committee received bids for the construction of the new fireproof building at the location. Now I'm just reading this. Like I said, I will get all the show notes. The building contract for the new almshouse was granted to J.W. Montgomery in March for $20,389, and the cornerstone was ceremoniously laid on May 17, 1916. The caretaker and his family took turns living in the almshouse. The Coles County poorhouse sold the almshouse to Ashmore Estates Incorporated in February 1959, and that is what it's still known as today. The corporation opened the building as a private psychiatric hospital by the same name. So the poorhouse went until...
1959?
Roughly, yes. Well, it was condemned in 1911.
Mm-hmm. And they built a new building.
Yes, they built a new building, and then that was open until about 1959, and then that sold, and it became a private psychiatric unit or hospital by the same name, Ashmore Estates. In October of 1964, after only 5 years in operation, the psychiatric hospital closed down because of debt. The institution reopened in 1965, but changed its focus from a private facility to one that accepted patients from state mental institutions. By 1968, they housed 49 residents. So it went from like a lot of people to like private residents to a little bit of people.
Yeah.
And then moving on, by 1976, they invested $200,000 into construction for a modern day addition onto the old building. The construction began in 1977, but it did not finish until 1980. That took a hot minute.
Yeah.
Once the addition to the Ashmore Estates was completed, the rest of the building was brought to code. They were hoping that it was going to take off. Like, it was better. It was cleaned.
Right.
But that's not what happened.
Is it the same building that had the rats and stuff?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Yes. It is the same building that they cleaned up. So that building was built on the 260 acres.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. All right. Whew. Sheesh. Oh, that was a journey.
It's a good journey.
Okay. So in 1986, Paul Swinford entered into a limited partnership to help manage the institution's finances. The departments of public aid and public health dragged their feet. Pretty much, they lost money.
Sounds like the running theme.
Yes. In 1986, they were trying to get it up and running. They invested a bunch of money into it, and it turned out that they were tanking. Their financial losses exceeded $1.5 million. By the end of April, all the residents had been transferred to area homes, and Ashmore Estates closed. So the building that was built in 1870 on the 260 acres was open from around 1870 until 1986.
Wow.
And that's when the building was officially closed, like the actual building itself. Now, it had been a poorhouse, and then it had been a psychiatric hospital, and then it had been a mental institution, and then it was a retirement home at some point in that history, or a nursing home, I should say, not a retirement home. I don't think anybody voluntarily went there.
Yeah. It seems like there's a running theme of them trying to get it to where it's a functioning business.
Yeah.
And they would invest money and it would flop. And then they would invest more money and it would flop.
And they tried again. Nobody attempted to do anything to it until 1990. And the same guy, Paul Swinford, wanted to create a mental health facility to treat teenage boys who were in the justice system. But that was vetoed. And the Ashmore Village Board unanimously rejected the request.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And they stated the concerns related to fire safety of the facility in public opposition, and it was completely rejected. The town did not want that. And then now I don't know if this is related, but oddly enough, in Halloween 1995, a fire destroyed the outbuilding that was across the lawn from the front entrance of the main building.
Oh, wow.
Sounds like arson to me, but I don't know. That's just my take on it.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't running, then that or a lightning strike. In 1998, somebody bought it with the intentions of renovating it to create a private residence, like for himself. But it was abandoned because of the continuous vandalism, which is sad.
Yeah.
So after that, it was abandoned until 2006, it went under new ownership. But a huge storm came through in 2013 and I believe ripped a floor off of it because it was 4 stories and according to the current caretaker, and then a huge storm took off the top floor.
It's probably a tornado.
People have time and time again tried to renovate this building and bring it back to life. No pun intended. And it wasn't until the current owners, who are Robin and Norma Terry, and they bought it in May 2014, and they have been owners since, and they have turned it into a haunted attraction. And that's now here we are. Took me forever to get here, but
what's funny to me, it's like they kept trying to use it for a similar purpose, and it wasn't until it was almost renovated as a memorial to all the people that it's kind of been successful.
Right. Now that you can come in and talk about the people that actually died there, the history of it, now it is successful because, I mean, they bought it 10 years ago and it's still going. People, if you Google it, you will find countless number of videos of people doing investigations there and people researching it and studying it. There's podcasts about it. Here I am doing a podcast about it. So the legacy lives on, just not how they wanted it to. The contractors and
and it's like we'll say the whoever's, it's like they didn't want more people suffering there.
Probably.
And they wanted to be remembered for what happened there. And that's what's happening.
Yeah. So I never heard of Ashmore Estates before. And like you said, you hadn't. But I stumbled upon it through the Paranormal Files, which is hosted by Colin Browen. He's one of my favorite YouTubers. You know, the one that I watch with all the history? That's him.
Okay.
You know, I know you don't get into these shows, but I enjoy the history of the buildings. And not many YouTube shows go into an hour's worth of history. And I love listening to the history of these haunted attractions, because where are these hauntings coming from? It's nice to kind of have a backdrop for it.
It puts everything in context for you.
Right. So if the place is haunted, why is it haunted? Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
His episodes on his YouTube show they're like 2 to 3 hours long. And usually an hour is dedicated just to the history and the tour with a caretaker of the facility, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And I will link his episode in the show notes as well, because that is where the current caretaker, he was interviewing her. And so some of this information came from her in the video. And I think it's understandable, and I think you could agree with this, why, if it is haunted, why it would be haunted with all the history and the energy that has been in those walls.
Well, a lot of times we talk about like things that are haunted or energy in a place. And a lot of times, I think we may have talked about this before, it comes from some type of trauma that was experienced in that place or that location.
Or just a deep connection.
Yeah.
Ashmore Estates has been said to be one of the most haunted and spookiest places in America. So people say that they see shadow people, figures standing in the windows or on the porches. They see the building is closed and vacant, and usually only the caretakers and volunteers are in there. But at night, nobody's in there unless there's an event going on.
Yeah.
Or one of the caretakers is opening the building for an event. But people have said to see people on the porches, sitting in the chairs or standing in the windows, and nobody's there. So I think that's really cool. There's also a motion light, kind of like our motion light in the closet. There's a motion light in one of the stairwells, and it goes off like ours does. Well, ours has not in a very long time.
Yeah, it hasn't.
At all. So there's one of those motion lights that's triggered in the stairwell. And Colin, in his episode, you can actually see it being triggered. And they're standing there watching it, and it's going off and coming back on. It seems very playful, kind of like what our lights do. There's also a 7-foot shadow figure that the caretaker has seen, and he has freaked her out a time or two where she's run out of the building because he spooked her.
Yeah.
Some have caught the voice of a little girl saying mama on an EVP, and I actually heard it, and it is bone chilling.
I bet.
Because it is adults in there, and all you hear is mama. Oh, I've heard mama before when I was by myself, and it is like makes you like full body chills. And they also hear footsteps, and they've gotten other EVPs through like spirit boxes or recordings, hearing people speak.
You know, as I'm thinking about it, it's like if any place were to be haunted, this would be one of them. Mm-hmm. And not even like haunted, but just spirits and energy remaining there because of the conditions, because of who those people were. They were already suffering in life. And you know, this is a way that their existence can be remembered. We may not know all their names, but we're remembering the trauma and what they went through in life. And I think that's important for a lot of people, especially in dire situations in life. They just want to feel like somebody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and what's really sad is they used to put orphans on the train that ran by. Now, this train's going to play a part in a second, but they would put orphans on the train, and the train would drop these orphan children off at Ashmore Estates.
Wow.
Yeah. So it wasn't just adults. It was kids. It's sad.
That's crazy. That is sad. It's very sad.
So the boiler room on the property is known to be haunted by a former inmate, Joe Bloxham. Joe was mentally disabled, and he would go out and about because, I mean, they weren't prisoners.
Right.
So he was out and about, and he was on his way back to the building, and he got hit by a train. He made it back. After being hit by the train, he was able to make it back to the facility where he died.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes. And so he is said to haunt the boiler room. He's very protective of the boiler room, and he's buried on the grounds in the small cemetery out there.
Wow.
So he said he's not a big fan of women, and he's very protective of the area. And they say that he pokes women and pulls their hair and he can get a little, he's very territorial, but something about women, he doesn't like them. But the caretaker, she disagrees. She doesn't think it's him pulling their hair or anything, but who knows? We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
And then the other notable death that happened on the property, because there's other than illness, tuberculosis, and suicides, these two were the most reported on that were different. It was a little girl. Her name was Elva Skinner, and Elva was 4 years old. It's very sad. And she was getting ready for the day, and her dress caught fire. And
Lord.
Yes, because you know, back in the old days, like the material was
flammable.
Yes, it was very flammable. And she was gravely injured, and she died 10 days before her 5th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yep. She is buried in the town of Ashmore, so you can visit her grave, but she died in the building, and visitors will bring her toys and offerings to her, and they'll leave it kind of in her room. And it is believed that she will play with those toys. She'll hold your hand. She's the one that they believe is heard calling mama or laughing. You can hear her laughing. And you also sometimes will feel a breeze like push past you. Mm-hmm. And they believe that is her, and she's roaming the halls. There's also reports of 2 sisters that lived there. They were in their 30s. Their names are Mary and Margaret. And they had their own bedroom that it said that they were 30, but they had the mentality of an adolescent. Mm-hmm. And they're boy crazy. So if a man was to go into their room and like read them a story, they get a lot more activity than say like if I went in there and read them a story. So they get a little boy crazy when the gentlemen come in.
We know all about that.
Oh goodness, yes, we sure do. Yeah, so those are like the main ones that they talked about on the episodes. And when I was reading the 2 with Joe and Elva, those are the 2 that I saw over and over and over.
Yeah.
You know, it is said to be haunted by all the spirits that died there. And like the caretaker said, there are about 200 reported deaths that they know about that took place on the property. The caretaker recommends if you do go there to venture outside your normal questions. They like to have fun, so ask them fun questions. Like she said a story about her sister asking, what kind were your favorite shoes? And she just thought that was ridiculous. Why are you asking a spirit about shoes? Yeah. And then they got an EVP saying how I'm finally somebody asked me about my shoes. So I thought that was funny. But, you know, she made a good point. She's like, you know, people come in and they ask the same questions over and over and over. Like, are you there? Is somebody here? What's your name? Blah, 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 blah.
Did you do something new with your hair?
So I think I've watched so many of these shows. It was nice to hear something a little different.
Yeah.
So, yep. And it is open. It is open for tours. It is open for overnight investigations. It is open for daytime investigations. And you can even, if you wanted a family portrait session, it is a beautiful backdrop. You can go out there and take your family pictures.
Well, I think that would be a fun trip as long as it's not winter. I don't do well in cold climate.
No, you don't. You don't like the cold. You don't winter well.
No.
But yes, that is my episode on Ashmore Estates. I wish I had more stories. I would like to add that to my list of places to go.
Yeah, it would be cool if one of the listeners has been there or knows more about it, or this spikes their interest in going, and they go and kind of give us a report back.
I want to go.
I do too.
I mean, I want my listeners to go too, but I want to go.
Yeah, I definitely want to go.
Let's go. Well, that's kind of how we ended up at the Crescent. It was one of those places I wanted to go to, and we went.
Yeah, it was. That's one of the best trips.
It was. It was really fun.
Yeah, it really was fun.
Next trip you're driving, though, because I'm tired.
I'm not driving to Illinois.
No, you don't have to. I mean, when we're there, when we rent the car, you're driving. I'm tired of driving.
Although I have driven to Peoria.
Not recently.
No.
He's not driven in 6 months.
No, I was 19. Yeah, I haven't driven to Peoria in more than 6 years. Wow. Thanks, babe.
Is that... No.
Yeah, it's been 21 years.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I was 19.
Wow. Sorry.
Was I 19?
You said it.
Yeah,
I'm just going... I wasn't around then.
Yeah, I was 19. Because I missed my plane flight.
Oh, that's right. Or you just were sleeping.
I was told the plane was leaving at 6. I assumed it was 6 in the evening. It was 6 in the morning. And they left. They didn't call me or anything. They just left. And then I got a call from my aunt.
Learning lesson.
And so I got my stuff together and drove 15 hours and then went to work and worked 12 hours the next day.
Good for you.
Then I had to drive back with an old Vietnam vet who was a drunk. He bought a big bottle.
Drank the whole way.
He bought a giant bottle of Crown Royal and drank and cussed the whole way back.
It's a memory.
I drove to Holland, Michigan and back. I think that was a good episode.
I do too. All right. Well, that is our episode. It abruptly ends. that is the information. If you ever go and you have information, or if you've been, I would love to chat with you. Just shoot me a message, an email, a DM, whatever, and just tell me about it. I'd love to hear about it. So we are going to be out of pocket for a little while moving, but once I am settled in our new house and figure out where I'm going to be recording, because right now I don't have a spot to record there. There's an office, but there's no door. It's kind of open, and that sounds like it would be extremely difficult. So I'm going to try to find a little spot in the house where I can record.
You'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out. But yes, until we return, thank you for listening, and they'll see you later.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.